was about time for me to finally check out a PC case of the surprisingly good type at a surprisingly reasonable budget-friendly price. I'm introducing you to the Zalman Z9 Iceberg in the color version black. For you enthusiasts of white stuff, you can also pick up a white version of this. At the time of this video, or rather, at the time of writing the script, you have to spend about $100 to $110 on this case, which is neither that few nor much. What I can tell you right away though, is that we are being offered quite a few nice surprises here. Some of those things I didn't expect at all. Nonetheless, no one of you should expect perfection from this case, because it sure isn't perfect. As far as what comes included, all this standard stuff when it comes to cases. A manual and a small accessory box with screws and whatnot. In terms of aesthetics, the Z9 Iceberg certainly speaks to me. I like those sharp edges when it comes to the design language, but at the end of the day, that's simply a matter of preference. All in all, the case is constructed very well with a nice thickness of steel, so it doesn't easily bend in certain spots. Still, there are a few plastic elements on here, such as the front cover, for instance. And this leads us to the very first drawback of this Z9 Iceberg. It doesn't offer the best airflow. While there are mesh air vents on the side, on the left and right side of the cover, it doesn't allow for fans to draw in that much fresh air. But hey, not a catastrophe by any means. There is some air movement, just not the best, is what I want to say. The case can hold up to eATX motherboards, and there's tons of room for fans. Especially in the front, we are being graced with a true rarity these days, support for up to two 200mm fans. Good radiator support is on today's menu as well, and that applies to both the front and top of the case. By that I mean you could fit up to a 360 or 280mm radiator in the front and up to a 360 or 280mm one at the top. As much potential is being offered here in terms of fans, it disappoints me a little to only find two pre-installed ones in here. That's a 140mm one at the front and another 140mm one on the rear. Furthermore, a bit of a bummer that there are no rubber grommets to be found here. Luckily though, all those cutout holes are in their right spots, some of which are even cleverly being covered, and that even brings us extra functionality. I'm talking of the cable cover, onto which there even is a graphics card holder attached that can be adjusted the exact way you need it to be to keep one's precious and heavy GPU from sagging. Furthermore, that cable cover also comes with rails in it, which can turn out quite useful for certain custom water cooling setups. Should you hate the cable cover, or should it get in the way of something by any chance, you can easily remove a few screws and take it out. Now, how does one protect oneself from dust in the Z9 Iceberg? Well, at the top we get a good magnetic dust filter. At the very bottom for the power supply, a rather smaller removable filter, and behind the front cover there's actually nothing. Zalman has obviously skipped on the dust filter here. It's very likely they did that to not further hinder the already slightly restricted airflow. A bit of a shame, but understandable from a technical standpoint. Needless to say, the case does come with a hard drive cage that can hold up to two 3.5 or 2.5 inch drives. 3.5 inch drives can be installed toollessly, but can additionally also be screwed into place. We get more mounting points directly behind the motherboard tray, the classic way. On that bracket, there's not just room for up to 3 SSDs, but for up to two 3.5 inch mechanical hard drives. That's pretty darn impressive. I should, however, probably mention that by loosening a few screws, the hard drive cage can easily be relocated to one's liking. Of course, if you so desire, the cage can leave the case entirely. On the PSU Shroud, there are threads for those included riser cable standoffs, part of the accessory box. A riser cable is optional here and not included. Still, at least we are being given the option to go for a vertical GPU configuration. That certainly is doable, and in fact we are graced with 3 vertical expansion slots. Other than that, there's tons of room for graphics cards. As a matter of fact, we are talking of a max length of 390mm, according to Zalman. Very much noteworthy, especially within this price range of PC cases, the fact that Zalman equips this case with a good number of USB ports. This also includes a very desired USB Type-C port. Good stuff. I couldn't help but notice the LED button that's on board though. Lighting, the case comes with none. So I guess the button is reserved for one of those simple RGB controllers, which are usually controlled via the reset button on many cases out there. Such an RGB controller, however, is not part of the packing list. Building my usual test system into the Z9 Iceberg turned out to be a fairly seamless and fast process. There were no clearance issues with my hardware at least. Even the radiator doesn't cause any clearance issues at the top, since the mounting holes are placed further to the side in order to not obstruct any of the motherboard's heatsinks. Looking all good. The fans, during my testing at least, appear to be operating fairly quietly too. These fans are just barely audible to me. So maybe it's time to risk a look at the Chamber of Horrors, as I tend to call it, because that's where you'll once again have to witness my impatient, sloppy cable management job. Even though I'm doing a pretty poor job most of the time, I'm pretty content with what's possible here. There's quite the amount of room available back here, so one can keep it nice and tidy. It's just a matter of wanting to do that. The Velcro straps sure do their thing as well. So to cut to the chase, the Zalman Z9 Iceberg Black does impress. It comes with a lot of strengths at its price point of about $100 to $110, but does of course also come with a noteworthy drawback, and that would be the slightly restricted airflow. Nothing alarming, but I do want to point it out. Aside from that, tons of fan and radiator options, a lot of room for beastly epic systems, an impressive amount of SSDs and HDDs can be housed in here, and last but not least, those USB ports, and especially the USB Type-C one, sure are impressive. So no wonder I can definitely recommend this case. Zalman has done a really good job with this one. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll be back when I have my next video ready.